All right. Good afternoon, guys. Let me ask you a quick question. Are there any Filipinos in the house? Because I know that we got the Asian American, but I know it's a large Vietnamese population here. No Little bit? Okay. All right. Do you speak Tagalog? No, that's all right. So it's funny because does anybody believe in coincidences? Raise your hand if you believe in coincidences. Okay. They happen, right? Why do coincidences happen, though? I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that there's divine intervention, and it's fitting that we're talking here in a church here. So I want to talk to you about a couple of coincidences that's happened just since I've been here, okay? So, and how this meeting came about is like Tao had mentioned, y'all had a tremendous showing out at the UPW event in Dallas. Do me a favor, stand up if you went to the UPW event in Dallas, just so I can see, because I recognize a couple people. All right, good. There we go. Good. So, all right, thank you. Now, you go ahead and have a seat. Thank you very much. So I saw somebody with I think it was Chance Edmond. I'm not quite sure on that, so if I'm screwing that up, forgive me. But he had a 405 area code number on a shirt for his business. It was like a sanitation. What's that? There you go. There you go. And so I came across him, and I saw the 405 number. I was like, dude, I want to create like a Tony Robbins fan group here to do like a mastermind thing where we could get together. Because, like, you know, when you go to these big cities, when they have the events in Miami and New York and Chicago, they've already got like a huge showing out. And then when you're in Dallas, of course, you're going to get these little local groups that form up. But in Oklahoma, we don't really have that. So I wanted to do that, so and then I lost his number and couldn't find him. So when I messaged Tao because he had mentioned her, I sent her a message, and she didn't respond for like a month. And I thought, this lady's big time in me. What's up with that? So finally, she responds to me, and we have a talk. And I'm like, yeah. She was like, who's this big bald white guy sending me a message? You know, so. I was like, but hey, my dad was married to a Filipina, and I've got like a half brother that's Filipino. Like, can I be included? You know, so that's the Filipino joke there. So bad joke. All right. Anyway, so coincidences. So we ended up talking, and she goes, hey, you know, she invited me to come speak here. I said, it's funny that you mentioned that. I used to go to church here a couple years ago with a girl back in 2018 when I went to my first UPW event in Chicago. Coincidence number one. Coincidence number two, my buddy Eric Marlowe. I've been friends with him since 2012. Haven't seen him much. He cuts my yard occasionally, like when I finally give him a call or whatever. We're good friends, so it's good to see him. Coincidence number two. And coincidence number three, my camera guy. He just got done shooting a session this morning, the wholesalers meeting for Tez, another real estate investor, and small world, how we're all connected together. Lord works in threes. Isn't that kind of a divine type of deal? Isn't that cool? All right. So the story of what we're going to talk about today is how to double your income in the next 90 days. Now, first of all, raise your hand if you'd like to double your income in the next 90 days. If you don't raise your hand, you will lie about other stuff. All right? So let's raise it again. Who would like to double their income in the next 90 days? All right, that's better, okay? So, and then now raise your hand, be honest. When I say double your income in the next 90 days, who thinks that sounds a little hypey? Thank you. Okay, so I told Tao what I wanted to talk about, and she goes, well, why don't we make it 10x? I go, well, I've actually done this before multiple times, so let's just keep it there. I was going to say 4 to 5x, but I was like, that sounds too hypey. And so that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm just going to kind of give you a quick backstory. So in 2018, I went to Chicago for the UPW in Chicago, all right? And at the time, I was dating a girl that went here, and she was an attorney. Totally toxic relationship. My life was going great. I was 365 pounds. I was broke. Marlo, you remember, I had my car repossessed. Like, I was struggling. And when we went to this event, we were kind of on the outs, like this thing was on life support, the relationship, right? And she happened to have a family reunion going on in Illinois, And I said, well, hey, I just happened to get a free ticket from a friend of mine who's a platinum partner, which was the inspiration for why I wanted to join the platinum partnership. I said, if you want to go, cool. If not, no big deal. That'll tell me I'm done with you anyways. I didn't tell her that. And so I swung through Illinois, picked her up, took her, and we had a great day or two. And then we ended up breaking up during the event, so that was cool. We'll talk about that story later. So the first day at UPW, as you know, you did the firewalk, right? You step up, you make your move, you get into state, and you just walk across those hot coals, cool moffs. You get to the other end, stamp it out, and you do your celebration, right? That was probably one of those most pivotal moments in my life. And if you haven't been to a Tony Robbins event, don't be stingy and go to the online event, because breaking a board is nothing like walking across hot coals. I can tell you that, right? So when I went, I was also depressed at the time. I was suicidal, okay? And I was on antidepressants. And at that event on the first day, one of the things I learned was about how to manage your state. And Tony talks about this concept called the triad. So I apologize, I wasn't prepared to bring a whiteboard and all that. But if you can imagine a pyramid with the base and it points up to the apex at the top, okay? And in the middle of this, you can kind of draw a circle with your state, your mental state, your emotional state. Let's do a little exercise. Everybody stand up for me, please. Now, if you have ever been depressed before, all right, I want you to kind of envision when things weren't going your way and you were depressed. And just envision in your body, how do you stand when you're depressed? Where is your head? Is it up or is it down? Where are your eyes? Are they up or are they down? Is your face up or is it down and slack? Okay? All right. Now, where's your shoulders? I want you to put yourself in this state right now. Where are your shoulders? Are they down or are they up and back? Down, right? And when your shoulders are hunched over like this, how's your breathing? Is your breathing full or is it shallow? Shallow. Now, in this state here, how much energy do you have? Is it high or low? Right. Now, let me ask you this. All right, shake it out. Get rid of that crap. Nobody likes being in that state, right? If I spit on you, by the way, that's a blessing. All right. So when you're in this state, do you think you make good decisions or bad decisions? Okay. Isn't it funny how everybody kind of knows this already? Well, I didn't know it for some reason. This was pivotal for me. All right. Now what I want you to do is think about a time in your life when you maybe you're in real estate. Maybe you just sold a house and made a bunch of profit, right? Maybe you met with someone that changed your life. Maybe it's the love of your life. Maybe it's your first child being born. Think about that state. Now imagine how you're standing. Is your head up or is it down? It's up. How's your voice? Is it elevated or is it down? It's elevated, right? Your shoulders are back. How's your breathing? Breathing's up, right? You feel good. Put yourself into that state right now. Breathe. I heard some breaths like that. Now, that feels good, does it? Now, do you think you're going to make good decisions or bad decisions in that state? Good ones. All right. We want to make better decisions, be smarter about how we live our lives. Do you think it'd be a good idea to live in this state versus the depressed state? This is what Tony calls living in a beautiful state. Thank you, guys. Have a seat. Thank you very much. This state is what got me off of antidepressants. This state is what turned my life around. When I learned this principle, I want you to think about this: principles and insights. You learn principles and you get insights. Today, I'm going to teach you a couple of principles that taught me how to double my income in 90 days. And then you're going to get some insights from them. What you do with those insights is the difference between this just being this was a good little motivational talk, or actually changing your life. Because I've done this on multiple times. All right. So that was what I call Jeremy 2.0 or Jeremy 1.0. Okay. So I took the concepts that I learned. I was kind of broke. I was working for a company called Leaf Filter, and I started just doing really well. I went on a tear and started making pretty good money. And at this point, I started making, like, I was around $8,000 to $10,000 a month, okay? And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this to, like, give a vision for where this went, okay? And I was 365 pounds. I started working out. I lost a little bit of weight. A friend of mine tried to talk to me about, like, an idea of, like, you know, instead of going to go get surgery in Mexico, she was like, hey, instead of going under the knife, go do this HCG thing or whatever. So I tried it. I lost a little bit of weight. It was okay. But I hadn't quite got the results that I wanted. I had taken some of the principles that I learned about state management, and it completely changed my life. I broke up with that girl, ended up getting into another relationship that, you know, ended up ending as well. Common theme here, common denominator. But anyway, so you guys can laugh at my mistakes. That's kind of the purpose of this. So then what ended up happening was I was the top rep in the office in Oklahoma City, and was still just doing okay. And I thought, you know what? And a year later, it was like, it'd been a year since I went to UPW in July. I tried doing this other thing, you know, and I ended up making an adjustment. Tony talks about the ultimate success formula. Am I putting you to sleep already? If you're falling asleep, you're going to have to stand up, do some jumping jacks. You can sit up here. I can split on you. All right, here we go. So, number one, the ultimate success formula. If you want to be successful, you have to get clear on what it is that you want. I heard a lot of people talking about their goals, which is great, but they weren't very clear. All right? They were kind of vague and ambiguous. If you don't really have a clear and compelling vision for where you want to go, you're never really going to get there. And so that was one concept. Number two is you have to create a massive action plan. This means you can't just kind of dip your toe in the water. You got to be completely obsessed with it, all right? Number three is you have to have sensory acuity, kind of know if you're getting closer to your goal or farther away from it. And then number four is adjust what? The goal or adjust the action? The action, exactly. You don't move the goalpost closer to make yourself feel better. You step up, right? One of the incantations we learned there, right? So, and then that leads me, I'm going to finish on this final point on the 7 steps here. So now we're in Jeremy 2.0 is what I call this, okay? In July, I had not had the results that I wanted a year later. I'd gone to this Tony Robbins event. It was kind of a rah-rah session. I implemented some of the mental state stuff, and I got off the antidepressants and all that. Yay, good for me. But I didn't quite have the results I wanted. So step number 1 is get clear on what you want. Step number 2 is take massive action. I thought I was doing that. Step number 3 is have sensory acuity to know if you're getting closer to your goal or not, and adjust the action. So I went to Mexico and had my stomach, which was about the size of a rugby ball, removed from my body, and did a gastric sleeve operation. Was able to lose 70 pounds in the next 4 months, lost like 100 pounds in 6 months, and ultimately, here I'm standing 130 pounds lighter still 4 or 5 years later. Okay, thanks for the applause. Thank you.
Cue the applause, right?
So in November of 2019, I was like, man, I want to go to another Tony Robbins event. So I went to the one in Miami. Were you there? You're nodding your head. Okay, cool. So I was like, I want to go to another Tony Robbins event. And a lot of people will say, like, why do you go to these events? Like, you can just watch it for free on YouTube, right? Well, it's like watching a Thunder game on TV or listening to it on the radio and like actually being in the stands and in the stadium. Completely different vibe, number 1. Number 2, how many times has anybody ever watched a movie before? Multiple times? Why would you do that? You've already seen the movie. Why would you watch the same movie again? Because it's good, right? And do you get different things out of the movie that you didn't notice the first time around? So that's why I got new insights, new principles. One thing I learned at the recent Date with Destiny and Business Mastery is you get what you need when you need it. And there's a third part. It was a brilliant concept. I'll have to teach it to you later when I remember it. So I went to this UPW, and at the end, Tony said, hey, now you've learned these principles, you've got these insights, you just walked on fire. What could stop this? Right? How many people attended the UPW in Dallas in November and have kind of fallen off a little bit? Admit. I have, right? So what's the difference between somebody taking the insights and running with it and completely changing their lives and it just being another motivational seminar? Or somebody, oh man, I don't know, he had me do this stupid crap where I was jumping up and down and all this stuff, right? What he said was, hire a coach, right? In real estate, Tony talks about there's 3 pillars of mastery. If you want to master any skill, there's just 3 pillars you have to master and you have to implement. Number 1, by the way, is the 5th step in the 4-step ultimate success formula, which is modeling. Find someone who has accomplished what you want to accomplish and model what they've done. Hire them. Don't be cheap. Go hire them. So step number 1 is modeling. So when he said hire a coach, somebody that has the results you want, I hired this badass, excuse my language. She was a platinum partner as well. And I hired her as a coach. Her name's Jen Hall. And in the first meeting with her, she said, I'm just checking my time because I get rambling a little bit. She's asked me about the Wheel of Life exercise. She was like, okay, Jeremy, what was your number 1 thing that you rated yourself on the Wheel of Life exercise? And I said, it's income. And she goes, great. How much money do you make? And at the time, it was the most money I'd ever made in my life. I was making like 8 to 10 grand a month, like I said, at Leaf Filter. And she goes, and that's a 10 for you? And I was like, oh, gut punch. You know, she was like, I know people that make that in a day. Like, that's a 10 for you? And I was like, okay, point taken. So she was like, I want you to get clear on what you really want. What is a 10 for you? And so when we came back the next week, I was like, well, this would be a 10. And she goes, okay, what's the most money you've ever made in your life? And I said, well, I made like 20 grand one month when I had like 3 paychecks and I did really well that month. And she goes, perfect. She was like, we get out of life, this is a principle for you, we get out of life what we are willing to tolerate. When I was at UPW in Chicago with my girlfriend, she made a statement where she said, you know, I was like, what do you want from me? And she was like, I want you to man up. And I was like, okay, if you want me to man up, I was going to wait until the event was over to end the relationship, but I'm just going to go ahead and end it now, right? I stepped up, I manned up. That's what she wanted, right? What was the point of me trying to tell you? Oh, yeah, I was no longer going to tolerate this toxic relationship. I had low confidence. Going to the Tony Robbins event made me realize that you get out of life what you tolerate. So if you think about your income as like a thermostat in a house, if my thermostat is set at 70 degrees in the house, that's my comfort zone. Everybody likes to be in their comfort zone. Nobody likes to step out their comfort zone, but that's where the growth happens. So when it gets cold in the house, like outside it's cold, the house gets a little cold, my income comfort zone's 8 to 10 grand. If I'm only making 4, 5, 6 grand, like I'm getting a little chilly in the house, what happens? Thermostat kicks on, heats it up a little bit, right? I'm sorry if I'm making your job a little harder, by the way. All right. I couldn't start the pace a little more. All right. So the thermostat kicks on. You kick up your activity a little bit, right? I'm not making enough money. I'm whatever it is in life. I'm just using money. It could be your weight. It could be the relationships you're in, the quality of the passion your love in relationships, right? It's what you're not willing to tolerate. So we get out of life what we're willing to tolerate. And if it's down here, we got to step it up a little bit, right? If your girl talks about, I'm going to leave, you're going to be like, wait, let me, step up a little bit, right? So that was income was down there. My level was here. Conversely, if I made 20 grand in a month, how's the next month going to feel? Like I'm just probably going to cruise, baby. I made like 2 months worth of income. I don't need to work as hard. The air conditioner, it got 100 degrees outside. Air conditioner kicks on. Let's cool down a little bit. Why do we do this? It's because those are our standards. So the first principle I learned from her was we have to raise our standards. Tony talks about this in the incantation, right? Set a new standard and then step up, okay? So that was my standard. So she goes, from now on, we're going to double your income. And she said, come hook or crook, come hell or high water, no matter what happens, by the end of the month, you're going to make 15 to 20 grand a month. Mind you, I hired her in December, end of November, December. I'm thinking, for the trees, the leaves have already fallen. How am I going to sell a leaf filter in our slowest time in December, January? Like, it's Christmas time, then it's January, then it's February, it's cold. How am I going to do this? So the other reason why we stay in our comfort zone is because we have our limiting beliefs, right? And Tony talks about this. Anybody remember the old 1, 2, 3, and then sticking the fingers up the nose exercise? All right? That's how we get rid of the limiting beliefs at UPW. It's great during COVID. That was a good one. All right. So she got me to raise my standards, and my limiting belief is she had me read a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Anybody raise your hand if you've read that book? All right, good. If I asked you, for the people who raised their hand, if I asked you what's your major definite purpose, could you recite it? No. There's one difference between reading a book and studying a book. It's one difference to attend a seminar or go to this real estate investor meeting and then fall asleep when the guy's talking to you, trying to help you change your life, right? So the difference is studying, you really got to take this to heart, okay? This is life-changing stuff. So when I read this book, she goes, by the way, don't get that book, because I said, yeah, I'd read it before, but I couldn't remember my major definite purpose either. She goes, all right, I want you to get the book, but don't get the modern one. Go get the original 1937 unedited original text. So I did that. She said, and read that book and do what it actually tells you to do. Because one of the things it has you do is write out your major definite purpose. Remember earlier when I said ultimate success formula is getting clear on what you want? That's one of the steps, is getting clear. When you read chapter 1, number 1 is on belief. What the mind can believe and can conceive, it can achieve. So if you don't believe you could double your income in the next 90 days, you're right. But if you do believe it, and that's what I'm trying to impart on you, is how I did this, which, by the way, we're getting to that point here. So I started reading the book, and I started doing the exercises, and I started listening to Bob Proctor. Anybody know Bob Proctor? Old guy, rest in peace. Right? He was a student of this. He said this one book changed his life. And he would read that book every single day, Think and Grow Rich. And when he would read that book, he would write in the margins, he'd read a page, he'd get whatever insight, principle, get an insight out of it, and that's what he would do, is he would read this book every single day. And then he said, my favorite phrase he always says is, what do you want? So when you're talking about your goals, what do you want? And then he said, what do you really want? Because a lot of people will set the bar here, and they're far more capable than they actually realize. So he says, not just what do you want, but what do you really want? And so he said, it'd be a good idea if I really wanted something that I would want to write it down. And he said, the reason why you don't have what you want in life is because of your limiting beliefs and your self-image. So how do you get rid of those limiting beliefs and that self-image? He said it's 2 things, repetition and emotion. Repetition and emotion. Tony says repetition is the mother of all skill. But it's not just repetition. You can't just say with affirmations, you can't just say there's no weeds, there's no weeds, there's no weeds in the garden and it just goes away, right? If you don't tend to a garden, the weeds are going to grow whether you do anything or not, right? So you have to have emotion involved with it. Because if you think about this, the person you are today is a direct result of all the decisions you've made, and a lot of the decisions you've made have probably impacted you because it did something emotionally, whether it was good or bad. If you're married, look at the person you're with, right? There's an emotion that changed who you are, changed your belief in yourself. So he said, if I really want something, it would be a good idea. You have your conscious mind and then you have your subconscious mind, right? So you need to reprogram that subconscious mind And the way you do it is through repetition and emotion. So he said, if I really wanted something in life, and this is the one key principle that I really feel is what doubled my income, by the way, so pay attention to this. He said, I would write it down in the present tense, the goal that I really want, in a way that says, I am so happy and grateful now that and then you write it in the sense of you already have it in your possession. So I think you were the one that said you wanted some more Airbnbs, correct? State your goal again, please. You stated it earlier.
Okay. I would like to start
a couple more. Is that 2 or 3? 2. Just 2, not 3. We don't want 3. Okay. All right, 2. Thank you. So I am so how many Airbnbs do you have right now?
2.
2. Okay. I am so happy and grateful now that I own 2 Airbnbs that make me X amount of dollars a month passive income. Something like that. Right? I am so happy and grateful. And he said, you know what? I would write it as soon as I wake up in the morning, and I would write it as soon as I go to bed at night. Because your subconscious mind is always working at night. Well, this is why, like, if you think about your evening routine, your bedtime routine, what are you putting into your mind right before you go to sleep? I remember when I went to school to be a chiropractor, and I was in chiropractic college, and I was just totally overwhelmed with human anatomy and the anatomy of the human body. And there was this, like, I called my dad freaking out. He was a chiropractor. And I said, Dad, like, I wasn't college material. I was in the military. I was just a dumb guy, you know? And I was like, I thought the skull was like one bone, right? And I didn't realize that there was actually 8 bones just in your eye socket, right? And one of the bones in the brain was called a sphenoid bone, and it's shaped like a butterfly. And I had my first anatomy and physiology test the next morning, and I was studying my A&P for the test, and I was having dreams about the butterfly, the sphenoid bone, fluttering around in my brain because it was the last thing I put in my head right before I went to bed. So if you wrote down with energy and passion and really visualized, I am so happy and grateful now that I have 4 Airbnbs that make me X amount of money passively. I am so happy. And then you have to feel those feelings. Sorry about the microphone. You have to feel those feelings. Tony says, you don't just want more money. You want the feelings that you think having more money will give you. So you can have those feelings now just by envisioning what it is you want and imagining that what it's going to feel like when you have it, and feel those feelings. Because if you don't feel those feelings, it's not going to permeate to the barrier that connects your conscious brain to your subconscious mind. Okay? It's that energy and emotion that goes into it. So, guess what I did? He was like, and I would challenge myself to do this for 30 days. And so I was like, okay, 100 times in the morning, right upon your waking. Why? Because your mind is still in that subconscious state right when you first wake up. And then 100 times at night, right before your head hits the pillow, because then your brain's going to be working on, how am I going to do this over the next 30 days as you're doing this? And so what ended up happening was I started doing the exercise, and I was like, man, I really don't want to do this. But I was like, all right, I'm just going to try for 30 days, and I'm just going to prove them wrong. It's not going to work. So, and I did the exercise. After the first month, I went from averaging 8 to 10 grand a month and the lady, my coach, said, remember, she said, come hook or crook, which basically means, short of me being a hooker and turning tricks on the street corner, or robbing, or being a crook and robbing somebody of their money, you got to do whatever it takes to make that money and be focused on that goal. I was focused on it every day. I wrote it down every day, 100 times in the morning, 100 times at night. And at the end of the month, guess how much money I made? My goal was, I'm so happy and grateful now that I make 15 to 20 grand a month, because that was my new standard. Guess how much money I made in the first month? How much? Oh, no, not even close. 14.5. 14.5. I fell short of my goal. And I was beating myself up. How many of you guys here have really high standards and high expectations of yourself, and even when you achieve something good, you don't give yourself credit for it? That was me. So I told her, I was like, man, I fell short of my goal. I only made 14.5. And she was like, Jeremy, you need to celebrate that. She was like, you have to celebrate, because what ends up happening is when you celebrate these little small steps that you take every single day, it formulates who you are as a person. She said, I want you to remember this principle as well. The power of setting goals isn't about getting what you want. The power of setting those goals is the man or woman you become in the process in order to get that goal. I'm going to say it again. The power of setting goals isn't to achieve the goal. It's the person you become in the process, the growth you become. So if you think about like losing weight as an example, okay? What does somebody who loses 100 pounds, what do you think how would you describe that type of person? Disciplined. What else? Consistent. Good. What else? Driven, motivated, right? And they're willing to put themselves and step out of their comfort zone. They're willing to step up. They're willing to do things that other people, they don't give up. They're persistent. Now, who would like to have all of those qualities? Right? So the power, it's not losing 100 pounds or 10 pounds like you had said, so you can have six-pack abs so you can show up to the pool party, right? That's not the point. The power of setting a goal isn't just to achieve the goal. The power of doubling your income in the next 90 days isn't so you can make more money. It's the growth of who you become as a person that ends up attracting that into your life as a reward. All right. So then I was like, all right, when I realized that, and then she said the one other key thing. She goes, now go do it again. I was like, oh my God. I just crushed it for the first month, and now I'm used to coasting. Now this is the type of man I'm becoming. It's not about making the money. It was about being consistent and doing it again. So instead of just coasting like I was and having this, everybody knows about commission salespeople, their income's kind of inconsistent, right? That's because they coast when it's good, right? And then they kick it up when it's bad, right? So month number 2, I did it again. I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm making 15 to 20 grand a month. And I got tired of writing it all out, so I just wrote down making 15 to 20 grand a month. But I said I was feeling the feelings, right? I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm making 15 to 20 grand a month every single month. And guess what I made the second month? Anybody want to guess? Well, 14.5 is what I made the first month. 15.5 is what I made the second month. Woo! I hit the goal, right? I made 15.5. And what was even really cool about that, because I was still kind of beating myself the first month, I was like, if you add 15.5 to 14.5, that's 30,000. You divide up to, man, I'm averaging 15 grand a month. And then I told my coach, and she was, oh, good job, Jeremy. Now go do it again. I was like, yeah. But this time I heard Bob Proctor's voice in the back of my head. And he goes, what do you want? What do you really want? I was like, I'm sitting here settling for 15 grand a month. What I really want is 20 grand a month. So I told my coach this, and she goes, whoa, Jeremy, you're like, whoa, calm down. Like, just settle for you. I was like, no, F that, Like, I'm going for it. I was saying, Bob Proctor said, what do I really want? That's what I'm going to do. And then I had a coaching client that she was like, oh, I want to do this too. I was like, okay, if you're going to do the exercise, then I'll do the exercise with you. And I meant to bring the book, and I forgot to bring the book, but I literally have pages on pages to prove to you that I actually did this. And then at the end of, now mind you, this is December 2019, January 2020, February 2020. What was happening around this time? Right? Guess how much money I made in February of 2020? $20,000. It was just over 20K. So I actually literally, what was I making before? 8 to 10 grand a month. I literally doubled my income in 90 days to making 15 to 20 grand a month. And then March happens, and everybody kind of knows what happens. So now I raised my standards. That was the key lesson I learned from her, was we get what we tolerate. So I raised my standards. I did the work. I was disciplined. I tracked my commissions daily. And that's a concept we'll talk about in the 7th pass here in a little bit. I was like, okay, cool. How am I doing on time? Oh, man, I'm way over time. All right. So now everybody loves this feel-good story, right? How many people would watch a movie that has good, everything went perfectly for the person, everything went perfect, and Andy ended happily ever after? Would anybody want to go pay to go see that movie? No. All right. So now we got the struggle. If you've ever, by the way, if you want a good book to read for men especially, this is called Keys to the Kingdom by Allison Armstrong, 1L, Allison Armstrong. And she talks about, when men want to transition from being a prince in their 20s and 30s to being a king in their 30s and 40s, how many men in here want to be kings of their kingdom, okay? You have to go through what's called the tunnel. And this is a time where you are struggling because how many people feel this way or have felt this way in the past? That, you know what, man, I thought by now I'd be making a whole lot more money than I am right now. Congratulations. Nobody else? One other person, right? Oh, you're young. You got time. All right. Gentleman in the back, thank you. All right. This is called the tunnel, where basically you thought that you did everything right and you're still not having the results that you want. And this is basically what happened with me. COVID was happening, and I was going to people's houses with freaking masks and stuff, and they wouldn't let me in their house and all that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't sell with a face mask talking through a screen door. I got to be able to build value. And I ended up quitting that job at Leaf Filter, where I was making 15 to 20 grand a month. I still had the standard, but now I was trying to figure out, I wanted to start a coaching business. I wanted to start, maybe my own gutter screen business. I had all these grandiose ideas, and I didn't take action on it. And I just sat there and struggled. I was in this relationship with a girl. I was we made this excuse about, we were living up in Blackwell, Oklahoma, and this $20,000 house that was falling apart. And bless her heart, she worked at Walmart. And we bought a house down in Oklahoma City because I thought, well, maybe if I move to Oklahoma City, maybe that'll do it. And then, we're sitting here struggling. She's supporting me. I'm falling back into my depression ways again. I'm losing, track of my focus. And then I come across this coach. His name is Jeremy Miner. He was a sales coach. And I came across him, and long story short, I invested $22,500 into his coaching program. And he taught this program called Neuro-Emotional Persuasion Questions, which basically is a new way of selling to people, to where it's not high pressure, it's not old school, it's not sleazy sales. All right. And I really took it to heart. And when I came back to Leaf Filter finally, when I came back to Leaf Filter, I was almost depressed that I came back to Leaf Filter, because I was I didn't want to work for this boss who was such a jerk. It was one of the reasons why I quit. All right. But I had this new standard, and I was struggling with my income. So finally I was grateful that he allowed me to come back. And this is the evolution of Jeremy 3.0. And so there was a guy in the office, he was crushing it. I came back, my standards were 15 to 20 grand a month. And I was doing it. I was making 15 to 20 grand a month, and I was doing okay. I wasn't the top guy in the office. I was middle of the pack. And I started implementing, some new guy came in and made 15 grand in a week. And I was man, I haven't even had a $10,000 a week paycheck. I was and then I heard Bob Proctor's voice. He goes, "What do you really want?" And I said, I want to make $10,000 in a week. These other guys make 15. I'm going to set this. So guess what I did? Started writing it out, saying it, and saying these affirmations. And not just saying affirmations I'm making $15,000 a week, making $10,000 a week, making $10,000 a week. You have to say it with feeling. Man, I am so happy and grateful now that I'm making, $10,000 a week. I am so happy and grateful now that I'm making $10,000 a week. 3 weeks later, I had my first $10,000 a week paycheck. This is kind of what law of attraction is, right? I say this, but I do feel the Lord does bless us when we ask for it. Ask and you shall receive. And it's just trying to focus on this. So I was like, wow, 3 weeks later, I made it. I was like, if I can do this 1 week, maybe I can do this multiple weeks. And I was like, Jeremy, you've been setting your standard for 15 to 20 grand a month for the last 2 years. It's time for you to step up. It's time for you to raise your standards. So now I was like, okay, I'm going to double my income. I'm going to go from 15 to 20 grand a month to 30 to 40 grand a month. Mind you, nobody in the office was making this kind of money. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. And again, what did I do? Go back to the same exercise. I am so happy and grateful now that I'm making 15 to 20 grand a month, 30 to 40 grand a month, and I'm the number one rep in the office. And this happened in June, by the way. In July, I realized I made the first month I had ever made $40,000 in a single month. Right? And I didn't even realize it at the end of the month because I wasn't tracking it like I was religiously before. Right? And I at the end of the month, I was like, holy crap, I added up all my paychecks. I was like, dude, I had a $15,000 paycheck, and I was like, man, I had a good month. And I added it all up. It was July of 2022. So I was like, man, this stuff really works, And so I went in, ran in and grabbed my girlfriend at the time. I was like, man, I made 40 grand this month. And then I remembered how I used to talk about making 15 to 20 grand, the story I started with in the first 20 minutes here. I clung to that story for 2 years. I would tell it over and over and over again. And then I was like, man, I do not want this month to be that story that I tell people for years, or I don't want this to be like the pinnacle of what I made for the rest of my life. And I asked myself, and this is another principle I learned from Tony Robbins, the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So I asked myself, what do I have to do in order to make sure that this isn't just a fluke and that I do this month after month after month? And I realized I had to invest in that training again, that sales trainer that I paid 22 grand to at one time, Jeremy Miner. I reinvested in that program again. And I was like, if I got really good at these skills, because there's still sales I'm missing out on, I could get better. I could be better. So I went ahead and reinvested in the coach again, and then ended up having several $40,000 months. And I set a goal. I was like, I ended up making I was on pace to do almost $400,000 last year, right? And my income the year before was $143,000, right? So it was like I was crushing it because of these concepts I'm talking about, raising your standards and doing the exercise and the incantations over and over again. And then August, there was a UPW virtual event. That's why I say don't do it, because breaking a board sucks compared to walking on fire, just saying. And so at that event, Tony talked about if you want to master any skill, there's 3 pillars. So I told you pillar number 1 is modeling behavior, or finding someone who has the results that you want and modeling them and surrounding yourself with them. Proximity is power, Tony talks about. So get in proximity with someone who has what you want. So if you want to be a real estate investor and if you really get clear on what you really want, what do you really want? Find someone who has that and go be with them. Go work for them. Go pay for their course. Go pick their brain, right? Go literally pay to be close with them, all right? So that's pillar number 1 is modeling. Pillar number 2 is total immersion. I don't speak Vietnamese or Spanish, but if I wanted to learn Spanish, would it be cool if I just I invested in this little course online? I heard this BABA thing. I heard it works really good. I've seen the commercials. It looks really good. Or would it be better if I moved to Mexico and lived in Mexico for a little while and was totally immersed in the culture, and everywhere I go, people are speaking Spanish. I'm watching soap operas. They're all speaking Spanish, right? Would that be a better way than learning, or just going to oh yeah, I did a class one time, right? Total immersion. So that means when you go to this person, totally become obsessed with that. Be focused on that one thing and literally just be around them Because if you want the results that they have, you have to do the things they did. You have to learn from them. You have to it's not just the tactics. 80% of success is psychology. Figure out what their psychology is, right? And then 20% is the mechanics of the tactics that they actually do. So this whole thing about me talking to you about, I'm so happy and grateful, writing it out 100 times, that's the tactics. That's the 20%. What's the 80% of the mindset behind that, right? So then I ended up, Tony talked about this, and then the third pillar is spaced repetition. It takes time. You got to practice this over time. You can't just go to a course and you can't just go to the gym and work out with the trainer and work out for a month and then you're fit for life. You got to continue going to the gym, right? So you do this spaced repetition. This is how you master any skill. So when Tony said this, I was like, I want to master sales. And then he said this, and I was like, wait, I've already done this stuff. I've already modeled one of the most successful salespeople in the world. I've learned from some of the most successful people in the world. I've done the total immersion. I've been in sales 15 years. I've been practicing this, living this, eating it, breathing it every day. I was like, well, and then I was like, what if I started my own sales coaching business? I was like, well, then my limiting beliefs started coming into play, right? And I thought, well, you're not making as much money as Jeremy Miner. Jeremy Miner averaged $2 million a year. You're only making $300,000 or $400,000. I was like, yeah, but out of Leaf Filter's the largest home improvement company in North America. They do $2 billion in sales. There's 2,000 sales reps. And you're the number 7 ranked income earner in the entire company. That's less than 1%. That's less than 0.5%. You've got results, and there's 200 offices around the country. Surely there's at least one person in each office that would like to make 30 or 40 grand a month, right? You just got done, by the way, that was in August. I just had a $50,000 month in commissions the month before that. How many people would want to learn how to make $50,000 a month in commissions, right? So I'm like, out of 200 offices, each office probably has somewhere between 5, 10, 15 reps. Surely there's at least one fairly intelligent individual that would like to invest in themselves and learn how to make that kind of money. And if there's 200 people, how would I make $1 million? I'm never going to make $1 million a year at Leaf Filter. The number one guy made 5, which is pretty good. Several made 4, something. Never going to make $1 million, though. How am I going to make $1 million next year? I thought, okay, if I had 200 people pay me $5,000, that's $1 million. Surely I could charge somebody $400 a month to coach them for a year to teach them how to make an extra $40,000 to $50,000 a month in commissions, right? So that's when I launched my sales company, or sales training company called Sales Pride, right? And then I also went to the Platinum Partner meeting because I was like, man, I always want to be a Plat. I've been wanting to be a Plat for a while. I said I'd do it in 3 to 5 years. And I realized when I showed up to the meeting, I was like, the only limiting belief of why I didn't join Platinum Partners was because I was only making $100 grand a year. I got to make at least $200,000 or $300,000 to be able to afford, because Platinum Partners is $85,000 investment to be in proximity to Tony Robbins. And then you also have to pay another $40,000 or $50,000 in the travel fees, plus. So it ends up being about $150,000 a year investment. So if I'm making 100, I got to make at least 250. Jeremy, you've already done that this year. And how long ago have you been wanting that goal? 5 years? What's stopping you? So I was like, well, called myself on my BS and stepped up and joined Plat. And then I, started this sales coaching business. I was like, okay, how am I going to get the word out there to these sales reps that work for Leaf Filter? Let's say I just want to focus on Leaf Filter reps, because that's my bread and butter. That's what I know. And then I was like, well, there's these sales trainers like Jeremy Miner and Andy Elliott and all that. And so I reached out to these guys. I was like, hey, the problem with your guys' sales training is they're like, Andy Elliott, you focus on car sales. And like Jeremy Miner, it's like more high ticket, like remote sales. It's like coaches selling to coaches who want to learn how to be coaches to other coaches, right? And it was like, what if we did like one for home improvement? And so the guy goes, hey, it's a good idea. Why don't you come out to Arizona? Let's do a podcast. So I did a podcast with Andy Elliott, all right? And got some results off of that, got people who reached out to me from that. And then Jeremy Miner also lives in Scottsdale as well. And I told him, hey, I'm in town. I'd like to just say hi, get a picture with you or whatever. He was like, yeah, come on through. He's like, better yet, why don't you come on the podcast? I was like, sweet. So I did 2 podcasts in 1 month. If you'd like to get the link for that, send me a message. I don't know if you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. J. Mitch, 1979. That's the year I was born. That's how old I am. All right, so you can send me a message on there. And then, so then that was basically kind of where we're at right now. And so that was how I ended up meeting with Tao. And because as a plat, I went to UPW, and then I went to Date with Destiny the next month in December. I just got done with Business Mastery last month. And the cool thing of what I wanted to be able to offer to you guys here is this, is like for the people that have gone to the Tony Robbins events, I want to create like a little group like you guys have right here for like Tony Robbins fans, people that have gone to an event, not just somebody that went to the virtual 3-day thing that's free, Time to Rise. Like somebody told me, oh, dude, I'm going to the Time to Rise thing. I'm like, good for you. Invest in yourself, right? When you are around other people like this type of meeting here, iron sharpens iron. You get better. So if you want to do that, reach out to me. I'd like to start a group. I got a couple other platinum partners. The cool thing with platinum partners is a lot of them have money and would like to invest in real estate. So it might be good for you to invest in that. A lot of them are real estate investors already. And then, from there, the last thing I want to kind of talk about is the kind of parting message here for you guys to be able to double your income. So what's the key takeaway you guys have gotten for how to double your income in the next 90 days? Does anybody feel like they learned the information on what it takes to double your income in the next 90 days? You think? That seems pretty confident. Go ahead. Why don't you recap for everybody?
What I got from it was really the morning and night, I'm very happy.
Yep. Feeling the feelings of actually being happy and grateful and like having it in your possession right now, not sometime in the future. Okay, good.
That's the biggest thing I got.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, that's it. I got this. I don't even need to write this down. And you were like, right, but 20% is the technique.
Yeah.
And 80% is the mindset. Mine is the technique. And I thought, crap, I only got 20%.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. Maybe that's why you need to hire a coach.
maybe.
Shameless self-promotion there. All right. So yeah, absolutely. Good job. Way to go. So that's basically the thing. It's part of the psychology is raising your standards. So if you think about how much are you making right now, you got to raise your standards. And then the limiting beliefs start to come into play. So the 4th or 5th day I was doing this exercise, you know what happened? Thank you. You reminded me of a part I forgot. That's why I had these goofy notes here. Number one thing, I was like, when you're writing it in the present tense, your brain is going to start to play tricks on you. And it's going to say, man, Jeremy, you are so full of you know what? Like, you're not making 15 to 20 grand a month. You're not making this much money. You don't have 4 short-term rentals, man. Who are you kidding? Your brain's going to start to do that. And then, I said I was just ignoring it. I just kept writing. I just kept trying to feel the feelings. And then what ended up happening was I said to myself when I was like, wait a second. I didn't say I was making 15 to 20 grand a month at Leaf Filter. I just said I was making 15 to 20 grand. What if I just kept making 8 to 10 grand a month at Leaf Filter and then started selling coaching programs or selling for Bob Proctor or doing this or doing that, starting a side hustle, maybe starting a gutter screen business of my own or whatever. I was like, I didn't say I was going to make 15 to 20 grand a month from Leaf Filter. I said I was going to make 15 to 20 grand a month. And then my brain was like, oh, okay. And it never pushed back on me ever again. And I really do feel like that part of that is psychology. So it's like you got to think about who are the people you're surrounding yourself with. right? Who are you in proximity with? Because those are the people you're going to be like. What are you putting into your mind daily? What are you reading? Jim Rohn says, read every day for 30 minutes. Skip breakfast. Skip your morning meal. Never skip your reading, right? What are you putting in your head? Last thing I want to put you on is this. This is the 7 steps on the pack. This is my beautiful girlfriend took her to Maui. She made it through the trip. I didn't break up with her there, right? We had this, went to this relationship event, which was a platinum partner only event, and learned some great concepts. And one of the best concepts I learned was the 7 steps, and I applied it more towards business than my actual relationship, which is what I was going there for. But I want you to really think about this. This is being recorded, by the way, by the cameraman. So I'm going to upload it to YouTube. If you guys want the link to be able to watch this over again or share with people, again, send me a message like on Facebook, Jeremy Mitchell, facebook.com/BigJOKC. All right, real creative name there. That's how you can find me on there. You could also text me. If you need my number, you can get it from Tao. All right. And so the 7 steps is number 1. Whatever you want, you have to get really clear on what it is you want. So when we're talking about these goals, we're talking about how it's kind of ambiguous. Like when you think about the 2 short-term rental properties, why do you want to add 2 more short-term rental properties? Okay, more passive income. So if you got $1 more, would you be happy? No. Okay, clearly, how that's not clear, right? So how much more passive income? $1,500 to $2,000 by 2 additional houses. Okay, good. See how we're starting to get clear? Who else had a goal that they raised their hand and talked about? Let's talk about your goal. Who else? Come on. Leaders go first. No leaders in the room? All right, there we go. Mayor.
I have the budgets that we're good.
Yep.
But we have 10-year-olds, so I didn't get all people finding all this. Start the process. The reason why is because it's 4 acres.
Sweet. I love it. Yeah. So what's the goal? Okay. Bring awareness. Right. So here's another problem with goals, and that's a great vision, but that's not really a goal. Right? You know why it's not a goal, Mayor?
So I have to get a tell us for it.
Well, okay. But how do you measure that and quantify it? No, I mean, because here's the thing. It's like, how many people know about War Acres? Like, it's still vague and ambiguous, and I'm not picking on you, but I'm using this as an example for everybody, because you might think your goal is clear, but it's not really clear. If you can't measure it, it's not a goal. It's a vision. So how many people need to know about War Acres? Now, that's a different story, right? 100% of the people? What if 99.9% of the people know that it works, but then one person doesn't? You got to be clear, right? So when it comes to let's just use weight for an example. I want to get in the best shape of my life. I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, why do you want to lose 10 pounds? What's the purpose behind it? What's the vision? What's the why behind it? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it attainable and relatable? Is all right, and then is there a timeline on it? Is it 10 pounds over the next year, right? Or is it 10 pounds in the next 3 months, right? So this is something where I want to talk about. Number 2, face the truth. The truth will set you, there we go. So when you face the truth and the reality, you have to ask yourself, what's stopping me? So Mayor, what's stopping you from everybody knowing that War Acres exists?
There's no...
Okay, all right. So this is kind of another ambiguous deal. We have to be specific and really face the facts on why we don't have what we have. So when I wanted to lose weight, if I had a stall and I asked myself, why am I not losing weight? I had to face the facts. Jeremy, you're eating popcorn and something at night. You're eating these little snacks. You're eating 150 to 300 calories or whatever, every, pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So if you're eating 350 calories a night that are just like completely useless, no reason for it. Now, every 10 days, you could have lost a pound of fat, but you didn't because you're eating at night. That's facing the facts, facing yourself in the mirror and being real with yourself. And here's the other thing. When you hire that mentor, they'll be able to see the blind spots in you that you can't see yourself. So if you can't face yourself in the mirror, let someone else call you out on your BS. Face the truth in the mirror, what's stopping you, and then create a massive action plan. Now, you can create your own massive action plan and just try to figure it out on your own. That thing that Jeremy said was pretty good. I'm going to figure it out on my own. I'm going to watch YouTube. I'm going to take advantage of all this free stuff out there. I'm going to do all this. And then you do this massive action plan, and you're like wasting your time. Because if you could just spray an AK-47 and eventually hit your target, or you could be a sniper, hire somebody that tells you exactly what you need to do, one shot, one kill, and get to your goal a whole lot faster and save you a lot of money and heartache in the process and get it done a lot quicker, collapsing time frames. And then also the 80-20 rule. Focus on, instead of saying, oh, I got to do all these things. No, just focus on like the 20% that's going to have the biggest impact that'll affect 80% of your business. And then outsource the other stuff to somebody else. Number 4, slay your dragons. This means doing the hard stuff, doing the work, right? Anybody love door knocking? Anybody love driving or dialing for dollars, right? So these are the hard things that people don't want to do, and these are some of the things that's holding you back. So what are the hard things that you are avoiding doing that if you just stepped up and raised your standards and forced yourself to do it, that in 3 to 6 months, you could double your income? Figure out what those things are and go do them. If you don't do them, don't complain about the success you don't have for the work you didn't do. That's another punch to the gut type of thing. And here's the thing. At first, it's going to take a lot of conscious effort. It's going to be hard. And it's like when you wake, do you think you want to wake up in the morning and go to the gym every day at 5 a.m.? When you're all motivated for New Year's resolutions, it's cool. 4 or 5 days later, you're tired and sore and you're not getting enough sleep and not eating enough food or whatever. And you're arguing with your spouse or whatever. It's like, man, I don't feel like doing it today. I'll go tomorrow. No. Do the hard things. And when you do it for long enough, they say a goal takes 21 days. That's BS. It takes 66 days to create the neural pathways in your brain to actually make it happen. So do the hard work, and then after a while, in about 90 days, maybe, perhaps, it becomes a habit, and you just do it because this is who you are, because the power of the goals, thank you. The power of goals is not the achievement of the goal, but the person you become in the process. And this is wiring your brain to become who you want to be so that you can get the results you want to have. Number 6. Raise your standards and measure more often. Because if you had a goal to make, let's say, $1 million this year, and you don't measure all year long, and then you get to the end of the year and you're like, damn, I only made X amount of dollars, 400,000 or whatever, right? Because you didn't measure. How many times do people write New Year's resolutions and then they don't review last year's resolutions until next New Year's, right? And they're wondering why they didn't achieve what they did. I had these old binders, these journals that I had that I was going to bring to show here. And what's so funny is when I go back and look at these journals, I haven't looked at them for a couple of years, but every single goal that was in those journals, one goal was to be 230 pounds. I achieved that goal. One other one had this, and it's because I measured and I stay focused on this consistently. Raise your standards, measure more often. If you measure once a month, you might have a whole bad month, but you won't have a whole bad year. So measure more often. If you have a bad week, if you measure weekly, you won't have a bad month. You'll just have a bad week before you get it back on track. Sensory acuity. Am I getting closer to my goal? This is step 3 in the ultimate success formula. Am I getting closer to my goal, or am I getting farther away from my goal? Do I need to adjust the action? And then number 7, This is the most important part. I'll leave you on this. Number 7 is celebrating once you reach that goal. In fact, I would tell you that every day that you do something that is getting you closer to your goal, celebrate that. Because when you celebrate those little daily steps that you take, you're anchoring them and you're creating good feelings, dopamine and serotonin and all that stuff. And you're creating new neural pathways in your brain that when you reward yourself, as you get closer to your goals, it's going to become more real to you. It's going to feel like that first month when I made 14.5 and I was beating myself up because I didn't reach my standard. Instead, I celebrated it. And then the next month I achieved it. And then I celebrated more. And then the next month I achieved it. And every time I reached the goal, I would celebrate. The first month I made 40,000, I had a girlfriend, she got her a Coach bag or Gucci bag or whatever, and then she bought me this little Louis Vuitton wallet. I was like, I didn't care about it, but every time I look at that wallet, it reminds me of when I made my first $40,000 a month in commissions. And then when I made my first $50,000 a month in commissions, I ended up getting this little watch here, little Rolex, and it was like, every time I look at the watch, it reminds me of the reason why I got it was because it reminds me of it's a celebration for reaching. How many more $50,000 months in commission am I going to have? I don't know. So every time I look at it, it anchors that in me and it becomes who I am. So when you reach number 7, celebrate it and then start the process all over again. Seriously. Once you reach this goal, celebrate it for a little bit and then set the new goal and start over with step number 1. Get clear. What is it that I want now? I got the 2 short-term investment properties. I celebrate them. Now what? Now what's the goal? Maybe 4 more? Right? Why? Why 4 more? For another $4,000 to $6,000 to $8,000 or whatever, right, of passive income. Well, why do I want $4,000 to $6,000 more passive income? So that I can do blah, 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 blah. All these whys, right? And you might be saying to yourself right now, when is enough enough? Dude, you made $50,000. How greedy can you be? How many houses can you have? How much money? $1 billion? Who needs that much money? Tal, we talked about this. People judge you and people have a fear of success, so they hold themselves back and they won't go for what they really, truly want. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. The reason for setting goals, besides who you are as a person, the reason for growth is so that you can give to others more. The reason for growth isn't just so you can accumulate more money, it's so you can do more for others. Because when you make more money, you can give more to your church. When you have family members that are in need, you can give to them. If there's a passion or a cause, you can help your children more. You can change your financial future for legacy for generations to come. One of my legacy goals that I want to accomplish in my lifetime is I want to start a school, like a charter school or an after-school program that teaches sales and entrepreneurial skills to where by the time the children graduate high school, let's say it's a junior high program, after-school program, like ROTC, like ROTC for military, right? They go do this, and they start their own business. So by the time they graduate high school, they have a business. Why, Jeremy? Why is that important to you? Because I think it's important that people develop critical thinking skills for themselves, and they don't just follow the sheep and the herd and just go to college, because that's what my mom and dad did. And I don't even know what I want to go to school for, but let's go underwater basket weaving, right? And, if you want to be a doctor or an engineer and that's what you're passionate about, by all means, go to school for that. But I went to school to be a chiropractor. I never finished my bachelor degree, never finished my doctorate degree. I make more money than most doctors do. With an associate degree is the highest level of education I've accomplished. These skills and start your own business and then decide what you want to do. If you want to go to school, by all means, go to school. That's what my passion is. That's what my legacy is. So thank you guys for having me out here. I hope you appreciated it.
And